Hello, and welcome to this week's edition of Weather or Not. I'm your host, Dana Osgood, joined by our forecaster for the week, Kyle Eck. Now, Kyle, we may be turning the calendar to November, but the temperatures are going to feel more like September.
I know, with high pressure settling in throughout the middle and late portions of the week, Dana, it's going to be feeling very nice.
Well, I'm certainly excited to see how that goes in your forecast, and I hear you also have some interesting nature in the news stories this week. What do you got for us?
So I'm going to be talking about how we can keep our pumpkins staying fresh outdoors and indoors through the month of November. And then also, maybe we don't need to be raking our leaves as much as we have been in the past. What are your nature in the news?
So my nature in the news stories this week about how particles from space can help meteorologists forecast cyclones, and a new treatment about nightmare disorders to see if we can help people with that.
Wow, that sounds very interesting, Dana.
And with that, let's get into Nature in the News. Nightmares can be scary occurrences for even the bravest adults, and some people are haunted by them every night. In a recent experiment, neuroscientists have found a way to chase the bad dreams away. People with nightmare disorders experience frequent and terrifying dreams that disturb not only sleep, but waking life as well. The current treatment for such diseases is imagery reversal therapy, or IRT. IRT entails helping people reimagine the nightmares with a more positive spin. Unfortunately, this psychological take only works for about 2/3 of sufferers. The newest experiment expanded on IRT with targeted memory reactivation, or TMR. With TMR, people focus on something while a sound plays. Then that sound is played again during sleep. TMR not only brought down the weekly average of nightmares from 3 to 0.2, but kept working over time, increasing to only 0.3 nightmares per week after 3 months. More studies will need to be conducted to ensure both the generalization and accessibility of TMR and IRT treatment combinations to ensure the nightmares are vanquished for good.
Halloween has come and gone, but that doesn't mean those festive autumn pumpkins need to go away just yet. They're a fall staple. They can be found in our food, drinks, front porches, and yes, even our living rooms. What's intriguing about them is how long they can keep their vibrant color. If kept indoors at a steady temperature, slightly below room temperature, fresh, uncarved pumpkins can hold up for almost a year. Outdoor uncarved pumpkins can last upwards of 3 months, only if there isn't a freeze. Otherwise, they will begin to rot as soon as they start thawing. Carved pumpkins have a much shorter shelf life. Carved outdoor pumpkins tend to last about 1 to 2 weeks in the cool outdoors, while indoor carved pumpkins typically won't last more than a few days. Pumpkins sure are a hardy fruit and can last quite a while in certain conditions. Depending on how mild this November is, we may be able to continue showcasing our favorite pumpkins outdoors heading into Thanksgiving.
Space is taking up space on Earth, in cyclones to be more exact. Particles raining down from space are offering 3D views into cyclones. Muons are fundamental subatomic particles 207 times larger than electrons. Muons created from cosmic rays that crash into Earth's atmosphere have exposed the inner workings of cyclones, according to researchers in Japan. Cosmic rays are sustainable natural resources and can be used everywhere 24 hours a day by meteorologists to help forecast the weather, according to scientists. Muons can show the inside of a storm because variations in pressure and density change the number of molecules that move through the storm. These can be counted and 3D diagrammed to model the inside of the storm. Muon studies are not expected to replace traditional meteorological forecasting methods, but with more research, they could be a helpful tool in forecasting the intensity of storms.
It's that time of year again for parents to send their kids outside to rake the leaves out of the yard. But what if the leaves actually don't need raked? It may sound absurd, knowing how aesthetically pleasing a clean yard looks after a session of raking. However, not raking leaves can actually both benefit lawn health and the environment. By leaving leaves on the grass, tree root systems can strengthen, lawn soil moisture will increase, and grass will receive vital nutrients such as nitrogen. A great way to keep fallen leaves from blowing away in gusty winds is to mow over them. This can also help spread them across the yard. By mowing leaves, insects will be able to have better food sources throughout the winter, which can then serve as a food source for birds as they also feed throughout the winter. This year, consider doing both your kids and Earth a solid by deciding not to rake your leaves. seen a very mild start to our month of November, and I think that's going to continue as the weekend progresses. Let's get right into it. High pressure dominates our weather here across the eastern portions of the United States, and we have very clear skies across the way. Those of us in the central valleys of Pennsylvania, we could deal with some morning fog on Friday, but that burns off throughout the day, and we'll have to pick up the sunglasses because it's going to be very bright for us outside. For the day on Saturday, a low pressure trying to move its way through the Great Lakes that starts moving towards our direction, and with that, we get a lot more humid. We stay mild, but the threat for showers does begin for us across central Pennsylvania and western Virginia. It's not going to be a washout on Saturday, but if you are having any outdoor activities, do pack the umbrella if you are heading outside. For the day on Sunday, though, try to bring your outdoor activities indoors. That's the best chance of rain for us, not just in Pennsylvania, but across the spine of the Appalachian Mountains and into the interior Northeast. It's not going to be very cold, however. We do have a cold front trying to move its way in. Rather, it's just going to act as more of a quote-unquote dry front. On both sides of the front, you can see very mild conditions across both the eastern seaboard and out in the Midwest. So as Sunday approaches, we can start to expect to see some very mild conditions as the weekend wears out. But before all that, on Friday, we have another day of very nice conditions, abundant sunshine with a high near 67 degrees. For Friday night, if you have any outdoor activities, maybe you don't even need the jacket outside. It's going to be very nice with a low getting down to near 53. For the day on Saturday, those clouds continue to thicken up, and we start to see some threat for rain showers. So if you're having any outdoor activities, maybe go ahead and bring the umbrella with you, although it'll be very mild with a high near 70. For the overnight on Saturday, again, very mild, dreary and damp with a low near 54. For the day on Sunday, that dreariness continues, but again, very mild with a high near 70 degrees. Coming up next, we have Caroline Castora's feature on wind and disc golf.
Disc golf is a sport where you battle other players and the elements. Like most outdoor sports, you're at the mercy of Mother Nature.
In a sport with so many variables, factoring the weather forecast for the day adds a new challenge. It's important you understand the basics of the sport as well as what weather conditions impact it the most. The rules of disc golf are pretty straightforward. Like normal golf, you have a certain number of strokes to make it in the hole. However, in disc golf, you have to just make a disc, similar to a frisbee, into a chained basket. Many people think that players just use any old frisbee to play, but in reality, there are many different types of discs a player can use. There are fairway and distance drivers, mid-range discs, and putters. Different types of discs have different flight paths, and they accomplish different things. Wind greatly affects disc flight. Seasoned players know exactly what disc to use and when, depending on whether there's a tailwind, crosswind, or headwind. Professional disc golf player Jeremy Colling explains the difference between types of discs.
We have different drivers that are meant to fly really far, and some of them fly great with tailwinds, some of them fly great with headwinds. When you throw a disc into a headwind, its tendency to turn against its natural flight characteristics are exaggerated. And the opposite is true with a tailwind. So we have to select different discs based on the direction of the wind and the severity of the wind.
Discs can also have unique flight paths. Flight paths have to do with stability and release angle. It can go hyzer, flat, and hyzer, but also overstable, neutral, or understable. Stable discs usually fly straight when it's released flat. Understable means the disc will turn over to the right when released, and overstable goes towards the left. The unpredictability of disc flight is hard enough, but having to factor in wind is a whole nother story. That, combined with dodging trees, bodies of water, and other obstacles, can make playing disc golf very frustrating. After learning the basics, it's easy to understand why disc golf is so weather dependent.
We're very weather dependent. That includes wind, cold, hot, humidity, altitude. It all really comes into every single little thing affects the way that a disc flies. And, when it's cold, it's hard to grip the disc. So that becomes a factor. And when it's raining, obviously the rain affects the grip on the disc. And so we're very, very weather dependent in our sport.
Rain is an obstacle disc golfers dread. First, a wet disc is more likely to slip and go awry. Without a solid grip, there is much less control over the disc. The flight path itself won't be affected by the falling raindrops, but the release could be a problem. Usually, professionals just pack many towels to keep the disc as dry as possible. A wet course can also just be a nuisance. It will get your discs dirty, and it could cause you to lose your footing when throwing. It's not impossible to play in rainy or windy conditions, but it does make playing more difficult. The same goes for playing in cold and or snowy weather. It's hard to get a good grip on a disc when it's really cold outside and your fingers go numb. Only gloves specifically made for disc golf are allowed to be worn. The freezing conditions can also make the plastic in the disc much stiffer, which is bad when you hit rocks or trees. The disc could even shatter if it's cold enough when it strikes an obstacle. When there is snow on the ground, it's very easy to lose discs in the snowpack. Using bright-colored discs is one way to help find them in the snow. However, be prepared to lose a disc or two until the snow melts. Other tips for playing in the snow include taping a colorful ribbon to the disc or spraying colored powder or dye onto the disc in order to locate it. On the opposite end of the weather spectrum, playing in extreme heat is very dangerous without proper hydration. Plenty of water and sunscreen, and play with another person or group to check in on each other. Playing in weather conditions that aren't ideal is possible, but it's all about adapting to the weather conditions.
Whether you're a seasoned professional or a beginner, disc golf is a great way to get outside and enjoy all nature has to offer, as long as you're prepared and the weather works in your favor. For Weather or Not, I'm Caroline Castora.
It's not exactly going to be the driest weekend we've seen, but it may be one of the warmest we see in a few months, so let's get right ahead into our weekend recap. For Friday, again, high pressure is dominating our weather. Abundant sunshine is in store for us with a high near 67 degrees. Clouds start to thicken over Friday night. The low not getting too chilly though, 53 degrees is the forecast low. For the day on Saturday, those clouds stick around, but we stay warm with a high near 70 degrees. To put things into perspective, this is about 10 to 15 degrees, or 15 to 20 degrees, above our average high this time of the year, which would mean our lows this weekend are actually going to be in line with our average highs. For the day on Sunday, rain starts to move in. We turn the clocks back, so make sure you turn the clocks back. We do get an extra hour of sleep in store for us. It's going to be nice, but it's going to be quite dreary out there with the high getting to near 70 degrees. To start our week ahead, it's going to be very dry to start, very mild as well with the high near 71 on Monday, but the temperatures start to scale back a bit through Tuesday and Wednesday as high pressure settles in place. Again, this is still well above average for this time of the year, the average high being about 51 degrees. And then ahead of our next rainmaker by Friday, clouds start to thicken up. Along with those temperatures, they start to increase back to near 60 degrees. Stay tuned, we have our Weather Whiz Quiz with Dana up next.
Thank you so much for that forecast, Kyle. Now let's get into the Weather Whiz Quiz question for this week. And this week's question is, how long can an uncarved pumpkin last indoors? Is it A, up to 3 months? Is it B, up to 6 months? Is it C, up to 9 months? Or is it D, up to 12 months? And if you chose D, up to 12 months, then you would be correct. That is pretty crazy to me, Kyle. I could never imagine a pumpkin lasting for that long, considering this year the squirrels ate mine in about 12 hours.
Yeah, Dana, the trick to getting it to last about a year is to put a sealant to cover it up and to protect it.
I wonder if people have like collections that they can make with them.
That would be very interesting to see.
I also thought your other nature in the news story was interesting about raking leaves. My dad always sent me out into the yard as soon as the leaves would fall, and it was my least favorite fall activity. My little arms just couldn't carry it.
I could say the same, Dana.
Well, thank you so much for tuning in to this week's edition of Weather or Not. Be sure to tune in next week for even more from all of us here at the team. Have a good one.